Welcome everybody. Today we're looking at Beatles historical events for January 15th throughout the years. And it's my birthday today.
Hey, congratulations. Happy birthday, bro.
So there's so many important Beatle facts, in fact, that happened on this day. So we're going to get right into them. The first one that's kind of interesting is that the Beatles were performing their 18 shows in a row in France at this time. So this was their second day. And it was interesting how times have changed, because the Beatles' opening act were jugglers. So, interesting. Playing for an audience of 2,000 people. So, interesting.
We can do that. We could open for the Beatles.
We could.
Easily.
You know, also on the exact very same day over in the United States, VJ Records sued Capitol Records and Swan Records over the manufacturing and distribution rights for Beatle records in the United States. And Capitol Records was granted an injunction against VJ. So, as you probably know, by the end of the year, Capitol and VJ both would release a ton of Beatles recordings competing with each other, and this would help boost Beatles sales in general. It would also allow the Beatles to have numerous hit songs on the radio at the same time from competing record labels.
Yeah. And that happened in a very short period. I believe the following year that came to an end.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly. Also in 1965, Murray the K, the self-proclaimed fifth Beatle, made a statement to the New Musical Express that aside from the Beatles, there's no other British band that can carry an entire show by themselves. I thought that'd be quite an interesting remark. I wonder what the Rolling Stones would have thought about that remark.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
You know, the Who, yeah.
And if you've been watching our show day to day, you're hearing the updated results. I feel like it's a political election. We're doing the day-to-day results of the battle between George Harrison and the Beatles in 1969. George had quit the band, but today, after a 5-hour meeting in January 15th, 1969, George came back to the band, but with an ultimatum and a list of demands, which they actually gave into. So George was showing his influence and power here, and some of the demands included the fact that he said, I don't want to hear any more talk about us going back on tour again. Drop it. I want us to stop focusing on making the movie. I want us to work on these songs as if we're actually recording a new album. And of course, that would now mean that they would now take this serious, and it would lead to Abbey Road being put together.
Yeah, which is one of many fans believe that Abbey Road is perhaps one of the greatest Beatles albums ever recorded. You know,
so, you know, if it wasn't for this going well, maybe George would have quit. Maybe the band would have disbanded right now. Maybe Abbey Road would have never happened. Maybe the Let It Be movie would have never got released. So this is a historic...
And speaking of that, Here Comes the Sun, one of the greatest songs on Abbey Road. And the other tune. What's the other single?
Something. Come Together.
Great tune. So, I mean, it's a good thing George didn't leave at that point, because those became two of the best songs from that album, for sure.
That's right. Frank Sinatra said that Something was the greatest Lennon McCartney song ever written.
I wonder what George thought of that one. Who knows? Also in 1971, everybody thought that the Beatles' finances were in such great perils, you know. But in fact, they had deposited £2 million into their organization. So they were still making a lot of money at that point, you know. I think it was just being filtrated out as fast as it was coming in. This was the problem, you know, and that's why they had to break up. If we're going to get right down to the fact, because of business. Yeah.
Also interesting, on this date, January 15th, 1970, the Beatles were technically disbanded, but nobody really knew it yet. But John Lennon was busy doing an art exhibit under the name Bag One, and it showed 14 lithographs. And unfortunately, Scotland Yard came and seized them, saying that maybe this was a pornographic show. Later they decided that they weren't, but it took 4 months for them to return the artwork to John. So that would have been frustrating.
In today's world, no one would have cared. It would have been like, hey, this is cool. But back then it was such a big deal. Isn't that something? Also, In 1991, John Lennon's youngest son, Sean, released his dad's, a re-release of his dad's Give Peace a Chance. And I thought that was pretty cool. And Sean, in his own right, is a very good songwriter. I quite enjoy his work.
And on this lucky day in 1984, Paul and Linda McCartney, while on vacation in Barbados, were busted by the police, charged with possession of marijuana, and they both pleaded guilty and were fined $200 each.
Wow.
I think they could afford it.
I think they could probably afford that, yeah. You know, it's funny, you know, over the last 30, 40 years, I've been a Beatles fan since like 1970 or 1969 when I was a little kid. I've accumulated binders full of articles from papers and stuff, you know, before the internet. And a lot of the stuff that I relate is from a lot of those articles that I remember, having a photographic memory, so I can, you know, remember a lot of these things. A lot of the times, a lot of the articles back in the 70s, we can't verify them. You know, it was in print, yes, but are they absolute fact? You know, unless you do a lot of intensive research, have the time to do that. You don't really know. So a lot of it could be mythical, you know, but a lot of what we're presenting is actual fact. But there is some of it that's on the fringe, you know, especially stuff that I'm telling you that I read. A lot of it's hearsay, but it's interesting nevertheless, because that's the stuff that I personally like. I like the fringe stuff. Yeah. What do you got to say on that?
It's true. I mean, that's the problem with the internet is, you can't believe anything you read.
No.
So, you know, we do our best to keep our info as accurate as we can, but of course we weren't there. We can't really verify anything. But you know what's interesting about this day also? January 15th, 1992, very sad day. Harry Nilsson passed away.
Yeah.
And of course he was very close friends with John Lennon. They were even out drinking and causing so much trouble they actually got thrown out of a bar together in Los Angeles back in the 70s.
The Lost Weekend, John Lennon said.
And unfortunately, Harry Nilsson died of heart disease at only the age 52.
Wow. Oh
Yeah.
my.
So
He was a good friend of John's. Yeah, they used to hang around a lot back in the day.
yeah. So there you go. A lot of cool events for January 15th, Beatles related. We'd like to thank you for watching. Leave us some comments. We'll see you tomorrow.
So my dear friends, come back when you can.